You did not click on this by accident. Something pulled you here. Some quiet ache, some unnamed exhaustion, some part of you that has been waiting a very long time to hear someone say what I am about to say. So before anything else, let me say it plainly, because you have earned the right to hear it without delay. Congratulations. If you are here today, watching this, reading this, feeling this, your 12-year test is over. I know that sentence sounds strange, maybe even impossible. You did not sign up for a test. Nobody handed you a syllabus. There was no exam hall, no proctor, no clear beginning. And yet, somewhere inside you, a part of your soul just nodded. A part of you just exhaled. Because you knew. You have always known that something has been happening to you. Something long, something silent, something that nobody around you could fully see because it was never meant to be seen by them. It was meant to be lived by you, alone, in the quiet rooms of your own becoming. 12 years. Let that number sit in your chest for a moment. Not as a statistic, not as a mystical coincidence, but as a living rhythm. A number that shows up again and again across the spiritual traditions of the world, because it marks something ancient and biological and cosmic all at once. The body renews itself in cycles. Jupiter, the planet of expansion, of wisdom, of higher learning, takes almost exactly 12 years to complete its full journey around the sun, returning to the place where it began. But you are no longer the same person it left behind. The old yogis spoke of life moving in cycles of growth, dissolution, and rebirth, layered one upon another, each one shedding what the last one could not yet release. 12 years is not random. It is one full turn of the wheel. And somewhere in the last 12 years of your life, whether you can pinpoint the exact day or not, something broke. Maybe it was a relationship that ended in a way that left you questioning whether you ever truly knew the person, or worse, whether you ever truly knew yourself. Maybe it was a dream you built brick by brick, year by year, only to watch it collapse in a single season, leaving you standing in the rubble of your own effort, asking the universe why it would let you work so hard for nothing. Maybe it was a loss, a parent, a friend, a version of yourself you used to be before the world got its hands on you. Maybe it was quieter than any of that. Maybe it was simply the slow, grinding loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. The exhaustion of smiling in rooms where your soul felt like a stranger. Whatever it was, that was the beginning of the test. And here is the part almost no one tells you, the part I need you to absorb slowly because your mind will want to rush past it. The test was never about the external event, the breakup, the failure, the loss, the betrayal. These were never the actual exam. They were the classroom, the real test, the one that has been quietly grading you for 12 years, was this: would you let the pain make you smaller, or would you let it make you deeper? Stay with me here, because this is where most people misunderstand their own suffering, and it costs them years they will never get back. When pain enters a life, the ego, that fragile, frightened part of you that believes it is only as safe as its circumstances, immediately tries to do one thing. It tries to explain the pain in a way that protects its old identity. It says, "This happened because I am unlucky. This happened because I am unworthy. This happened because the world is cruel and I should expect nothing good from it." And if you accept that explanation, you do not pass through the pain, you become fused with it. You build your entire identity on top of a wound, and then you spend years defending that wound as if it were the truth of who you are. But there is another voice underneath the ego's voice, quieter, older. It does not explain the pain away. It does not even try to make it make sense in the way your mind wants. It simply says, stay. Stay with this. Do not run. Do not numb. Do not perform okayness for people who were never going to understand the depth of what you're carrying anyway. Stay and let this reshape you from the inside, the way pressure reshapes carbon into something that can survive forever. That voice was your soul. And the 12-year test was the slow, repeated, sometimes brutal process of your soul trying to get your mind to finally listen to it instead of to fear. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about how many times in the last decade you tried to move on too fast. How many times you forced a smile in a job, a marriage, a friendship, a version of your own face in the mirror, because you were terrified that if you stopped performing wellness, you would have to actually feel what was underneath. Think about how many nights you lay awake, staring at a ceiling that offered no answers, wondering if this aching, restless, unexplainable feeling inside you was a flaw, something broken in you that needed to be fixed, medicated, distracted, numbed. It was never a flaw. It was your soul refusing to let you settle for a smaller life than the one it came here to build through you. This is the part that will sound strange to people who have never walked through real darkness. But it will land in your chest like a key turning in a lock if you have lived it. The years that hurt you the most were not punishment. They were preparation. Every collapse was clearing space. Every person who left was making room for who you would need to become to meet what is coming. Every dream that died young was dying so that a truer one could be born in its place. One that was not built on the approval of others, not built on fear of being alone, not built on the desperate need to prove your worth to people who were never actually paying attention. And here is where the spiritual dimension of this becomes impossible to ignore if you are honest with yourself. There is a force, call it the universe, call it divine intelligence, call it God, call it the silent witness behind all created things. The name matters far less than the recognition, that does not waste suffering on people it has no plans for. Think about that sentence again. A soul that was meant for a small, unremarkable, unconscious life does not need 12 years of refinement. It does not need to be broken open again and again, only to be stitched back together slightly wiser each time. That kind of repeated dismantling and rebuilding is reserved for souls who are being prepared to carry something, a gift, a purpose, a frequency of awareness that could not have survived inside the person you were 12 years ago. You were not strong enough back then to hold what you are about to become. If everything you are stepping into now had arrived to the person you were a decade ago, it would have destroyed them. The success would have inflated an ego that wasn't ready. The love would have been misused by a heart that hadn't yet learned how to receive without grasping. The opportunity would have been squandered by someone who still secretly believed they didn't deserve it. So the universe, in its strange and merciless mercy, did not give you the gift first. It gave you the fire first. And the fire was not cruelty. The fire was preparation. You had to be melted down before you could be reshaped into a vessel capable of holding what is coming. And this is where I want you to slow down, because I am about to say something that might quietly rearrange the way you see your own life. You have likely spent the last several years feeling like you were behind. Behind your friends who seem to have it figured out. Behind the timeline you imagined for yourself at 20 or 25 or 30. Behind some invisible measuring stick that society hands you the moment you're born, telling you exactly what you should have, by when, and what it means about you if you don't. But what if you were never behind? What if you were simply on a different curriculum? The masters who walked this earth before us, the sages, the mystics, the quiet saints who lived in caves and forests and crowded cities alike, they all describe the same hidden law, though they use different words for it across different traditions. Nothing in this universe ripens before its time. A seed planted in soil does not bloom because it is impatient. It blooms when the conditions inside it and around it align. You cannot rush a soul's unfolding any more than you can rush a sunrise. And so if your 20s were chaos, if your 30s were grief, If your most recent years felt like wandering through fog with no map and no guide, that was never proof that something was wrong with you. That was the unglamorous, unphotographed, unposted reality of becoming someone the old version of you could not have imagined. Let me bring this down from the abstract into something you can feel in your body, because truth that stays in the mind never transforms a life. It has to descend into the chest, into the breath, into the way you carry your shoulders when you walk into a room. Remember the version of you who cried alone in a car because you didn't want anyone to see how much you were struggling. Remember the version of you who said, "I'm fine," through a throat tight with everything you weren't saying. Remember lying awake, calculating where it all went wrong, replaying conversations, replaying choices, wondering if you were the problem in every story where things fell apart. Remember praying, even if you don't call yourself religious, even if it was just a desperate whisper into the dark. Please, just show me this means something. Please don't let this be for nothing. It was never for nothing. And here is something I need you to understand with your whole being, not just your intellect. The very fact that you are watching this right now, that these words are landing somewhere deep instead of bouncing off the surface of your attention, is itself evidence that the cycle is closing. People who are still deep inside their test rarely recognize it as a test. They are too immersed in survival to step back and see the architecture of what is happening to them. The fact that you can finally see it, that you can look back over the last 12 years and trace the thread, see the pattern, see how each painful chapter was secretly teaching you something the previous chapter could not. That recognition itself is the proof. Awareness is the closing bell of every spiritual cycle. The moment you can finally name what happened to you, it has already begun releasing its grip. Stay with me, because what comes next might change how you see everything. There is an ancient teaching, found in different forms across many wisdom traditions, that says the soul does not grow by addition. It does not grow by accumulating more comfort, more certainty, more control. It grows by subtraction, by the slow, sacred stripping away of everything false you mistook for your identity. Your job was not the test. Your relationship status was not the test. Your bank account, your body, your reputation, your achievements. None of these were ever the real test. They were simply the outer costumes that life used to teach you the actual lesson hiding underneath. Who are you when all of that is taken away? Who are you in the silence, in the collapse, in the unbearable not knowing? Who are you when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when there is no external validation left to lean on? For 12 years, life has been quietly, patiently, sometimes painfully stripping away every false answer to that question until only the true one remained. And the true answer was never your job title. It was never your relationship status, your followers, your achievements, the version of yourself you performed for approval. The true answer, underneath all of it, was always, you are the awareness that survived every version of yourself that had to die. You are the witness who watched the breakup, the failure, the loss, the years of confusion, and is still here, still breathing, still capable of love, still capable of beginning again. That witnessing presence, that quiet I am beneath every role you've ever played, that was never broken. That was never abandoned. That was the one constant through every collapse, and it is what's left standing now that the test is complete. This is the part that the mystics across traditions try, again and again, to describe. Knowing language will always fall slightly short. You were never being punished. You were being refined. The same fire that feels like destruction when you're inside it looks, from a higher vantage point, exactly like purification. Gold does not become gold by avoiding the furnace. It becomes gold because of what the furnace burns away. Think now, honestly, about who you were 12 years ago and who is reading these words today. The old you needed people's approval to feel safe. The you reading this now is starting to understand that approval was never safety. It was a cage with better lighting. The old you ran from silence because silence forced you to feel things you weren't ready to feel. The you reading this now is beginning to understand that silence is not empty. It is full, full of a presence that was always trying to reach you beneath the noise. The old you believed that if something hurt, it meant you had made a mistake. The you reading this now is beginning to suspect, quietly, almost rebelliously, that some of the most important things that ever happened to you were disguised as mistakes. This is the breakthrough. This is the moment the test was always building toward. You were never broken. You were being unbuilt, taken apart piece by piece, not by a cruel universe, but by an intelligent one that understood that the structure you were living inside was too small for the life you were actually meant to carry. And now, after 12 years of demolition disguised as misfortune, the foundation that remains is not the false architecture of who you thought you had to be loved, accepted, safe. What remains is something far more solid, because it was not built by your fear. It was revealed by your endurance. So if you are here, today, somehow drawn to these exact words at this exact moment in your life, know that this is not coincidence. The same intelligence that orchestrated every painful turn of the last 12 years has now, quietly, without announcement, brought you to this moment of recognition. And recognition is the doorway. You do not walk through the rest of your life the same way once you understand that the storm was the schooling. What comes after a 12-year test is rarely loud. People imagine awakening as fireworks, as sudden transformation, as waking up one morning unrecognizable. It is almost never like that. It is quieter. It looks like finally being able to sit in stillness without needing to check your phone to escape it. It looks like saying no to something that would have once seemed like a perfect opportunity, because you can finally feel in your body when something is not aligned, even if you can't yet explain why. It looks like crying over an old memory and realizing the tears are not grief anymore. They're gratitude, strange and unfamiliar gratitude, for a pain that taught you how to actually live. It looks like waking up one ordinary Tuesday and realizing the heaviness that has lived in your chest for years has, without ceremony, without warning, simply lifted. You will not get a certificate for this. No one will throw you a party. The people closest to you may not even notice the shift, because it is not happening in your circumstances yet. It is happening in your being, and being always precedes circumstance, never the other way around. The outer world is simply the last place to catch up to an inner transformation that has already occurred. So let this be the moment you stop waiting for permission to believe your own becoming is real. You do not need the new job, the healed relationship, the reverse diagnosis, the reconciled family, the finished dream to prove the test is over. The proof is already here, in the fact that you can recognize the pattern at all. The proof is in your capacity, right now, to feel both the weight of what you survived and the strange dawning lightness of what's arriving, at the very same time, in the very same breath. 12 years asked you one question, over and over, in 100 different disguises. Will you abandon yourself to be loved by people who were never capable of seeing you? Or will you stay loyal to the quiet truth inside you, even when it cost you everything that once felt safe? And you stayed. You did not always stay gracefully. You did not always stay without breaking down, without doubting, without begging some unseen force for relief in the middle of the night. But you stayed. You are still here. And that, quietly, without fanfare, without applause, is the only thing the test was ever measuring. So take a breath now, a real one. Let your shoulders drop from wherever they've been carrying tension that doesn't belong to this moment anymore. Whatever this last cycle cost you, and I know it cost you more than you have ever said out loud to anyone, It was not wasted. It was the price of becoming someone capable of carrying what is coming next. You do not need to know exactly what that is yet. You do not need a 5-year plan, a clear vision, a guarantee. The seed does not know what the tree will look like. It only knows it is time to break open. And so are you. The test is over. What remains now is simply this: to walk forward, gently, awake, no longer performing a life you were never meant to live, but finally, quietly, becoming the one you were always being prepared for.